It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to our Takeout, Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. And today, because of the inclement weather, the President Joe Biden, moved up his January 6th speech on the eve of January 6th, January 5th. We just got the speech or heard the speech. And I have to honestly say, and I'm prone to want to support the president, but I was a little underwhelmed. A little underwhelmed because it was a kind of speech that, all right, on the one hand, he's got these low marks in the polls. He's got to fire up the crowd. But he's got the energy of a reflective, almost he's got this reflective poetic sense. So you got to hang in there with him. But we'll talk about the speech. We'll talk about that with Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Political Studies, Filipino American Studies at San Francisco State University, Professor Emeritus. We'll bring him up in a sec. We'll also talk to him about Claudine Gay, more Claudine Gay stuff, because it's not over. She has resigned, but the issue of Claudine Gay continues. I mean, the conservatives and the billionaires who are funding it, the right wing who feel there's something wrong with the higher ed, right? There's that wokeness in college and higher ed that they want to get rid of. They're not done. Claudine Gay is just the beginning. So we'll talk to Dan about that. But now let's get back to Biden. And I'm a former journalism adjunct professor, so I like to see what the mainstream media says. And the headline in the New York Times: Biden assails Trump over January 6th in speech, casting election as fight for democracy. Okay, we knew that. We knew he was going to do that. Here was the lead in the Times today. President Biden on Friday delivered a ferocious condemnation of Donald J. Trump, his likely 2024 opponent. I suppose you got to question, I guess they're both likely standard bearers. I mean, some people are still holding out that there's going to be a different kind of situation come November. That says, warning in searing language. Now, this is where is it searing? The language was searing. Biden may not have been searing. And maybe that's what I was missing a little bit. Because as one commentator said, well, some people fear that Trump's too crazy and that Biden is too old. And they're looking for someone else. And some people think that still may happen. I don't know. But if it was just between Biden and Trump, you might say, as my younger son-in-law said, well, of course, it's got to be Biden against Trump because Biden or Trump is the only one Biden can beat. So anyway, back to the Times. A warning in searing language that the former president, Trump, had directed an insurrection and would aim to undo the nation's bedrock democracy if he returns to power. Pretty plain, pretty basic. It's what the speech was about, a warning, which is why instead of, you kind of want to get fired up. Hey, this is dire. But I guess the best parts were in the reflective moments. Here's Biden.
Today, I make this sacred pledge to you: the defense, protection, and preservation of American democracy will remain, as it has been, the central cause of my presidency.
That got an applause. I mean, it's true. He's making democracy front and center. And if you're Asian American and you noted history, the pro-democracy movements in Asian countries, we got a pro-democracy movement right now in America that Biden, with this speech, flipped the switch We're fighting for our democracy right here. More Biden.
As we begin this election year, we must be clear. Democracy is on the ballot. Your freedom is on the ballot. Yes, we'll be voting on many issues. On the freedom to vote and have your vote counted. On the freedom of choice. The freedom to have a fair shot. The freedom from fear. And we'll debate, disagree. Without democracy, no progress is possible. Think about it. The alternative to democracy is dictatorship. The rule of one, not the rule of we the people. That's what the soldiers of Valley Forge understood. So was me. We have to understand it as well.
So there's Joe Biden, kind of setting the parameters. He's going to, I mean, the issues are important, but there's a fundamental issue that he doesn't want you to forget, that democracy is at stake in the 2024 election. And what better time to make that claim than on the eve of January 6th? And this is back to the Time story. On the eve of the third anniversary of the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol by Mr. Trump's supporters, Mr. Biden framed the 2024 election as a choice between a candidate devoted to upholding America's century-old ideals and a chaos agent willing to discard them for his personal benefit. We must be clear, Mr. Biden said, democracy is on the ballot. Your freedom is on the ballot. I played you that excerpt. There's another excerpt where he talks about how Trump is all about creating chaos and creating a kind of a division where we're always arguing all the time. We're never coming together as one. Here is Biden again, and it brought on another applause moment.
You see politics as an all-out war instead of a peaceful way to resolve our differences. All-out war is what Trump wants. That's why he doesn't understand the most fundamental truth about this country. Unlike other nations on earth, America is not built on ethnicity, religion, geography.
Now you get that. Now I'm sensitive when Trump says that, because America is not built on ethnicity, even though I talk about, Asian Americans, Filipino Americans. I have an Asian American ethnic perspective, but we do this program because one of the subtitles is WDAAAT. What does an Asian American think? Because they never bother with us. This is one of the things about having one of the first primaries in Iowa, where the diversity of the nation is barely evident in Iowa. I mean, there's a smattering of Asians there. I know, I've talked to a few, but, it does not look like America, and they're going to decide. They're one of the first states to decide what's going to happen, at least on the Republican side. So this idea that America is not built on ethnicity, religion, and geography is important, because this is where we all come together. It's not about our ethnicity. It's not about Jews or Muslims or Catholics or Protestants. It's not about East, West, North, South. He says, this is what Biden said.
We're the only nation in the history of the world built on an idea.
We're built on an idea, he says. That idea, it's the democratic idea, that the idea of democracy, that we
hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal. It's an idea declared in the Declaration
of Independence,
created in a way that we viewed everybody as equal and should be treated equal throughout their lives. We've never fully lived up to that. We have a long way to go, but we've never walked away from the idea. We've never walked away from it before. And I promise you, I will not let Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans force us to walk away.
He's not going to let us walk away, being forced to walk away because of Donald Trump. That's what he says.
We're living in an era where a determined minority is doing everything in its power to try to destroy our democracy for their own agenda. The American people know it. and they're standing bravely in the breach. Remember after 2020, January 6th insurrection to undo the election in which more Americans had voted than any other in American history? America saw the threat posed to the country. They voted them out. In 2022, historic midterm election, in state after state, election after election, the election deniers were defeated. Now in 2024, Trump is running as the denier in chief, the election denier in chief. Once again, he's saying he won't honor the results of the election if he loses. Trump says he doesn't understand. Well, he still doesn't understand the basic truth. That is, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your country only.
And another applause break. It's true. I mean, Trump has lost all throughout, his post-election fight to try to make the lie, to try to legitimize the big lie that the election was stolen. He hasn't done that. And yet here it is. We're at a time where there's a good number of Americans who believe the lie still. And even if Trump is elected, or even if he's convicted, they want to see him as president. So that's the state of America. It's the state of our democracy. President Biden established that in his speech. And like I said, it's a quiet speech. You want fiery speech, but it's more a quiet speech. And I guess I wanted a little more fire. He needs a little more fire. I hope he gets it. But let me bring up my good friend, Professor Emeritus Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethics Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies, Politics, Filipino American History. Dan, you saw the speech.
Yeah. And
What
I
did you
listened to all
think?
of the segments that you quoted from, that you excerpted.
Yeah,
I agree with you that it wasn't fiery enough.
yeah,
I thought, wow, searing, really?
yeah.
You
That
know,
was the New York Times
yeah,
description.
it wasn't. It wasn't.
Searing language, but he was not nearly searing enough.
No, he wasn't that hot at all.
Yeah.
In terms of temperature, he said some great things. I mean, I wouldn't even agree necessarily with,
Hmm.
but there's some strong language.
Yeah.
It is accurate, right? It is his encapsulation of the Republicans and what they stand for, their acceptance of authoritarianism, their redefinition of what happened on January 6th as tourism, not at least not an insurrection, is absolutely ridiculous. And the majority of Americans know that. And the thing that bothers me is he's now being judged as having done something that's more exciting and more consistent with presenting a strong, and aggressive posture. And the language certainly does that, but his actual posture does not. There was emotional parts, including a reference to Mr. Trump's past description of veterans as
Oh yeah.
losers, you know,
As he was
and he
talking.
took a long pause there, and it was very emotional, uh, and I thought that was strong. But once again, it's strong in the emotional sense, and not in the aggressive emotional sense. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so that's the problem with trying to deal with Trump. He's on all the time. He
Yeah.
is absolutely in aggressor mode. He is like a rabid pit bull, right?
Yeah.
He's on in aggressive mode all the time, 100% of the time. And so American society has accepted his kind of image and his behavior as what is representative of a strongman,
Yeah.
and he's doing that intentionally. I mean, I used to watch his in his early days when he would make speeches before he would come out, and while he was being introduced, sometimes after he had already entered the podium, right?
Yeah.
And he would raise his jaw and jut it out like Mussolini,
Yeah.
and I thought, this guy is watching those films. he's looking at some of these former pop leaders, even people who failed miserably. I mean, Mussolini got caught, trying to escape in a nice Alfa Romeo coupe, by the way. But he was trying to get across the Italian border. He got caught and he got slaughtered, right? So uh, he was a loser. Hitler, whether or not he lived past the bunker, right,
Yeah.
was a loser, and he's only kept alive by the most infantilized and fantastic believers in a particular form of fascism that we know is Nazism. But those organizations still exist, and that's where the Democrats in general and where Joe Biden in specific, right, has a hard time countering that. You really have to be much stronger and
Yeah.
assertive.
See, and this is where I do not like any kind of ageist kind of comment about, oh, he's too old, he's too this, but he is performing at the level that he can, and the posture that he takes is one of a quiet kind of quiet power,
Yes,
which is emotional. And if people are with him, that's great. But
yeah.
when you're trying to persuade people, it almost comes across as, wow, man, can't you turn up the volume a bit?
It's a little too genteel,
Yeah,
and that's been a problem not just for Joe Biden. I mean, he this is part of his character. I mean, he
yeah,
is this kind of a person, right? He is
yeah.
this kind of personality. He's the kind of person that would rather bring people together. He
Mhm.
is very diplomatic in his attitude, and that's part of the reason for his success with our European allies.
Yeah, but Dan, you'd have to say that because he's doing this all the time, people get the sense, the audience, the American audience, they get the sense, oh, this is politics. This is the way a winner sounds like, even though the winner is putting out rhetorical garbage that is hateful and racist. People,
Yeah, no, I'm agree. That's what I thought I was trying to communicate in my
yeah,
earlier statement. Is that
yes,
they've
yes,
accepted that as demonstratively assertive, and that's the standard for the strongman.
yeah, and
So
and you're right that people don't listen to the content; they'll
yeah, they
just
just
listen to
watch the behavior.
they'll
Yeah,
watch
that's
the
right.
style. They'll
That's right.
if the style is there, and if people are yelling and screaming, and if people are that's the kind of visceral communication.
Well, that's who shows up at his rallies.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you. I think the last time we talked, you mentioned that. Well, what kind of people cheer on his statements put forth in an almost comical manner, right,
Yeah,
about the hammering of an 82-year-old man, you know,
yeah,
and they cheered that. They
yeah,
love it, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I'm fearful because you got young people who are kind of turned off, and they're searching, but they really have no place to go unless a third party candidate really starts to capture the imagination. I hope not.
I think you're right that they feel that they have no place to go. I've had students say, directly,
Mhm.
uh, not necessarily ones that are in my class now. I haven't gotten to that kind of discussion yet. But when I have been on campus the last couple of times uh, recently, and they say, both parties have failed. I have no faith in either party. And I said, that's fine. It's fine to lose your faith in either party. It's good reason to take that kind of position and
Yeah,
occupy that space. However, my question to you is, what are you going to do about it? And
yeah.
that leads
Well,
us right to what you're talking about, which is where do they go? And
yeah,
and I think next year, well, now it's this year. This year, probably in the summer, we're going to see people understand that it is a bare decision. I mean, it is split screen decision. You either go for evil or you go not evil. Okay,
yeah.
and
I mean,
you know,
this is just a heck of a time to be going through this. We have this existential, democracy moment, and people are so, they're just not persuaded by the leaders. They're
well,
not.
they're everybody has gotten a callus. A little bit of a news info callus, because there's so much stuff going on that's
Right.
against Trump. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of stuff that's going on against Trump, and that has to get some level of coverage. I think it's too much coverage. I
Right.
like going to sources where there you can get deeper analysis and commentary on what's going on. But I think it gets too much mainstream coverage and too many minutes.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's important to like the speech was important, but the speech was like during the day,
Yeah.
and probably because this is when Biden's awake, and
Let's go.
but because
Let's
it's not
go.
a
I
prime
thought you
time
weren't going to
speech.
do anything ageist.
Well, I don't want to. I don't intend
Oops.
to. But
Oops.
the thing is, he could give this speech in prime time. You know,
You
he
should have.
it would have gotten coverage. But now he does it at like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It gets on the news and the 5, 6, 7 o'clock news, and people talk about it, but it doesn't get the prime time. And I don't know if people are well. I mean, he's trying to. It's on the eve of January 6th.
That's right. So he's going to make another speech tomorrow.
Yeah. And
You
but
know.
he's not giving the big one.
Yeah.
He's gonna, I think and then he's going to give a speech on Monday, actually, in South Carolina at the Mother Emanuel Church. So, Dan, we have an ethnic perspective, and I told you about I,
Can I comment on that?
yeah,
When he
yeah,
says we're not based, this country is not based on a religion or an ethnicity or what?
right.
Yes, yes, it is.
Oh, white.
Well, not just racism and not just white, but
Yeah.
Christianity.
Oh, yeah,
It's good. It's good. On every piece of money we have, it says "In God we trust." Well, which God? And why is it on there in the first place? So it's clearly religion is more than just a value; it's a mainstay.
yeah.
Of the cultural structure of the governmental framework.
All right,
You
it's
know?
there. These parts are there,
Well,
undeniable.
and what is the three-fifths compromise? You know,
Yeah,
why are the electoral college and the three-fifths compromise paired, right? And it's because of slavery,
yeah.
uh, and the need to be able to count black bodies at three-fifths the percent, 60%, right, of the of white population.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the right wing argues, and this is an intellectual, academic, political science argument, right, is that it's ridiculous to say that we're valuing black people at three-fifths of a white person. That is just not what the Constitution says. They insist that there's no such reference of that sort, right? That is complete. That is racism, reverse racism, to even say that. Okay, but the reality is, any logical person in reading that statement and understanding who all other persons are cannot come to any conclusion, either generically that black bodies are worth three-fifths of
Yeah.
a white body, or white bodies in general, or that as an individual case that's the
All right.
case. So
All
that's
right.
race. How
I
about
get your
Indians? Indians are mentioned in the Constitution. It's based on race.
yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
I get your point. But Biden was going for this idea that it's freedom, right?
Oh,
Democracy is based on this idea of freedom. All men are created equal,
yep.
and he acknowledges that we've not
We haven't
what
realized that.
we're not 100% there. But he this idea that we're created on this grand idea, and isn't it funny now that we have the power in this election to decide how far we're going to go with this or if we're
Yes.
going to end it. Because if
Yes.
people vote for Trump, the chances of this democratic experiment,
Yeah. Yeah.
democracy
Well,
ending.
see, there's two levels here, and you're starting to bring up the other element that people aren't talking about. They're barely talking about what happens afterwards, and
Mhm.
so there's Trump is vanquished, and then we move forward from there. That's the promise. That's the hope, right? On the left at least, and maybe in the middle as well. But now people are starting to say, well, what's the reality of even a post-Trump period, or is there a post-Trump period? Because
Right.
even if he loses, he ain't going to give it up. He's going to do the same kind of stuff that he did, when he was packing up the documents, right?
Yeah.
While he was doing that, he's
Yeah.
going to do the same kind of arguments and say that this was stolen and all the rest of that stuff. Now, what he does is important because there's people that are going to act on that.
Right. And they're going to be the disloyal opposition. And
And that's what
and
you have to do. You have to understand that this ain't going away. So even if he's there, I mean, he's not there as president of the United States. What about all those other people that are
yeah.
in Congress and in other offices, appointed, not elected offices, who were participants in the conspiracy for
Yeah.
January 6th?
Right. And are willing to carry the mantle in the absence of Trump. So you're right. I mean, there's no guarantee that the election of 2024 is going to snuff it out and that this movement will end,
Yeah.
because
I mean,
even with people put in prison for like hundreds of years, right? I
yes,
mean,
yes.
dozens of years, right? There's like something like 1,200 people who were charged and 900 who were convicted. He mentioned that in his speech. Uh, that movement, that minority, is not going away,
No,
and
it's
they'll be.
always been there. Not the same people, obviously,
Yeah,
but the element that thinks that way. The element in American society that believes that the United States, the whole concept, is a racial concept, that it's white people that should be supreme in this society. It is Christians that they
yeah,
believe should be supreme in this society. It is men that they believe should be supreme in this society. Now, not all people who believe in the former two believe that it's only exclusively men, but they certainly agree, men, women, sexually different, okay,
yeah.
people that are on the right really believe in racial and class supremacy. They really do.
So we aren't, even if we win, even if Democrats win the election in 2024.
And all three branches.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that we get rid of this thing
You
that.
can't. You
Yeah.
can't get rid of it.
Well, you can't. It's in America. It's America
Yes,
too,
it is
right?
America. People keep saying that's not us. Yeah, it is. Michelle Obama, right? That's not us. Yes, it is. Okay? In great
Or
part,
it's
it
it's
is.
some it's some of us, and they have their voice. But the difference is, like in that little clip I played, you can't just love America only when you win.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You got to love it when you lose, and people aren't used to losing, and when they lose, they
Well,
call them.
I mean, I'm a Niners
And
fan.
this is what my family would say. This is why I have a Trump streak in me when I'm playing Scrabble, and I insist that the word rezap is a word, and
Weird.
that I should get a triple word score on the Z. I mean,
Uh,
they say you fight on everything, just like Donald Trump. Well, I'm sorry, I'm the Donald Trump of Scrabble, but
right,
not in democracy, not in democracy.
right.
So anyway, all right. So look, the question is Joe Biden going to be helped by this speech? Are people going to like? Is
Yeah,
the bell going to go off and people going to say,
yeah.
"Oh my God"?
I don't know. Okay, well, I'll answer it and then I'll expect you to retort,
Yeah,
or if there is a retort. But anyway, yeah, it will reassure people who are already pro Biden.
right.
Okay, it'll
And he
give them
still
some
has it.
sense
He
of
still got it.
reassurance. He still got it, and he said the right things. I mean, the words are there, and they're accurate, and he's right, and the emotion, at least in print, is there, and so they're going to be reassured, right? Now that is not the message that is going to win over the middle who are concerned about their freaking grocery bills,
Yeah.
right? I was shocked, man. I was stopped at a gas station late last week, and there was like a 50 cent drop in the per
Oh
gallon price,
yeah. I mean,
and so that's some good stuff, man. I mean,
right.
because
I mean
that
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 the
yeah, it works
economy's doing
across the
much
board.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Soft
but the
landing
people are still
time.
saying, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I'm so in about it in a bad way. I'm so hurting.
They are never going to feel good, because here's the thing, and I've been thinking about this, ever since the good news came out. that really has supplanted the bad news. I mean, inflation has gone down and prices are going down. They'll never feel good because the basic inequality still exists in America.
Absolutely.
We are not Elon Musk. We are not, uh, Bill Gates. We are, if you're part of the 99%, you're. It's tough to see people live these lavish lives of the 1% and the above 1%, the fraction of the 1%, and feel good about America. And something's got to happen on that score. I mean, it's more than just trying
Well,
to
a
talk about
couple of
workers in
polls,
the
a
middle
couple of
class.
polls have come out and said that the majority will support taxing the hell out of billionaires. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
so that's been consistent, right? I
yeah,
mean, they can see that now,
yeah.
but
I mean, yeah, I
unfortunately, that happens on a state by state basis, right? It's a regional and local way of looking at that issue, and there's still enough states that are controlled outright by Republican controlled legislatures
state
that they're still not
legislature.
going to let that happen. It's got to get done at that level or through Congress,
Yeah,
and so
I
we
mean
got to
that's
win. We got to win the lower house. The lower house is the one place that proposes tax cut,
and
and we need that.
it's got to be a real mandate. Otherwise, we're more in that room for Joe Manchin or Kristen Cinema to like
Oh
fuck
man,
things up. I
you
mean,
know,
there's got to be a sense of a mandate
you're right.
going one direction, and if there's
Yeah,
no mandate or no woman date, then we're not going anywhere. And
yeah, that's what makes it hard. For
yeah,
contributing to political campaigns right now.
yeah,
There's so many people that are on the that
yeah,
if you contribute to campaigns, you're going to be making a lot of dime and 20 and $25 campaign donations for the next several months, right? And all
yeah,
kinds of directions. So
yeah. I
anyway,
mean, yeah. I mean, all right. So Joe Biden's speech put it on the map. January 6th is on the map anyway. We got to honor it. We know that there were a lot of Asian Americans who were part of, they were in the crowd. There are January Sixers who are Asian
yeah, and
who were
I was embarrassed by some of that.
oh yeah, there were
Really?
Filipinos, and then but
Oh yeah, with the broom. Remember that? We're
the
gonna
yeah
sweep out the
yeah
oh man.
yeah. But there was one image in January 6th, not just the Congress people who were threatened, but afterwards there was that picture that the Wall Street Journal um, published. Andy Kim, who's now running for Senate, I believe, from New Jersey, he was seen at Statuary Hall in the Capitol, sweeping up the debris from
That's right. Yeah, the day after,
the day after,
or
and
even the
it's
day. I think it might have been even the day.
such a touching image that the Smithsonian in Smithsonian 101, 101 Objects, it is written by a former student of yours, Professor Theo Gonzalez.
Right.
He included it in his book of 101 Asian American Objects. That and he put Andy Kim's blue suit there
Cool.
as a just an image. It's in the book. People should check it out. Smithsonian 101.
Yep.
Uh, and
Yep.
I mention it only because it's an anniversary coming up. Asian Americans have to, you know, I mean, it's an important date. It's not a date that you say,
Yeah.
well, it's
We're
on a
on both
Saturday.
sides of that, and we had people in an elected office in Congress, and we got a lot of staffers,
Yeah.
right,
Oh yeah.
that work on the Hill, and they were all jeopardized by that action, and it's been totally deflated from the Republican Party point of view
Yeah.
to a nothing incident. You got 1,200 people tried, over 900 convicted. So recently, one of the Proud Boys from Florida got 10 years.
Yeah.
That's some serious stuff, man.
Yeah, it's almost as if people want to undo history, and
Yes, they
and
are
this
doing
and this is
undoing
recent
it.
history. This is just 3 years, right? And I use this to transition to the Republican caucus in Iowa because Nikki Ha- Nikki Haley was asked another question about the Civil War, and her best answer was, "Some of my best friends are blacks." I mean, it was kind of like, oh man, that's it. I
Some of my best relatives are brown.
yeah. I mean, I just think that Nikki Haley should know that you should, I mean, she blew it on the
Yeah.
first time when she didn't mention the Civil War. She should
Oh,
just say, "Oh yeah, that's ended. That's ended. Let's forget about that. That's past, and I'm not going to talk
but
about it."
now I'm going to talk about Iowa.
Yeah, but then she says, "Look," but she tried to,
People in New
you know,
Hampshire are hipper, man.
yeah, no, she tried to make it better for her by saying,
Yeah,
"Oh, in South Carolina, we talk about slavery from day one. You're in school. We talk about."
yeah.
And she didn't say, well, some people she it wasn't like a condemnation of slavery,
No,
like, oh
no,
my
no,
God,
no. It's just
we
a
should never
mention.
have
We
had
mentioned it. It's not like we're so irresponsible we pretend it doesn't exist.
it.
She
Right.
gets over that hump,
Yeah.
but she
She said,
doesn't condemn it.
right. Well, she says that, oh, well, governments, they have to
Yeah,
decide,
yeah, it's
what
everybody
is
else's
best.
fault.
Do we have to
Okay.
own people? I mean, see what she lacks is a very basic kind of confrontation of what slavery is. Owning someone, slavery, it's the worst thing.
Yeah,
we're never for it. I mean, she comes close but in a political way. Like, I told people that we're going to take down the Confederate flag.
yeah, that's right. It's
But
all indirect stuff. It's all actions on symbolic level.
yeah,
Yeah,
and that was based on the Mother Emanuel shooting,
yeah.
and it was not on slavery. But she would do herself a favor if she mentions it again to say it is never slavery is never right to own another person based on their race, to have them provide labor, because her first answer was, governments have a right to choose how they want to save on labor costs, and if it
That's
means
it.
owning a
That's
black
it.
person, then
Government. I think it was worse than that. She said government should not be able to dictate, your how you live your life. It
right,
shouldn't be
right.
able to restrict your freedoms.
Right, the federal government, but of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
state government can
So
say, "Hey, we want to own slaves."
that's a long distance from, yeah, I want to own somebody.
She's got to condemn it and come out there and
Anybody, not just her, but
yeah,
anybody
you're right. Anybody,
who's running for office has got to condemn it.
yeah.
But
So
but
there really should be
even brown guys like Ted
right.
Cruz, right, in
Well,
Texas.
what did she say? She said, "Look, as an Indian, some of my best friends were blacks and whites." She tried to make it sound like, "Oh, we fought racism. We
Yeah,
fought
but
racism."
see, people don't realize that the sum of my best friends are is a condemned perspective
Oh yeah,
from a liberal point of view.
yeah.
Even liberals don't understand when people of color say that some of my best friend stuff is just doo doo.
I know, and
You really shouldn't do that.
it's just yeah, it's bogus. It's not real, and it's not.
Well, they
It's not
maintain it's real. I don't want to. I don't want to. Say that their feelings are wrong. They probably feel good about the fact that they know people, right? The
right.
the the question is, how deep does that knowing and understanding go?
Right. Well, also, they have to morally condemn slavery. They
Yeah,
don't
there you go.
morally condemn slavery by saying some of my best friends are blacks or some.
That's right.
As an Indian person, I experience racism. They have to say morally it's reprehensible. It's inhumane. How could we ever have done this?
Well,
That's
actually, if she knew history better, she would know that there were actually more Indians that were imported after slavery was outlawed by the European countries.
right. She
There
could have
were
said
Indians that were imported to the Caribbean.
right.
That's why there are so many people who look like South Asians, you
Mhm.
know, in the northern nations on the Caribbean's southern border. The northern border of South America with the Caribbean.
Well, yeah. Well, once again,
There were actually more Indians imported than Chinese.
well, yeah, I know, and this is part of the. If you had a historical perspective, you could put it into context, and you would have a basis for which to talk and condemn racism.
Exactly.
She doesn't
Exactly.
have it.
And she could personalize it. She could
Yeah,
say that, the tradition of our presence, right, came from being substitutes for the end of
after
slavery,
right,
you
yeah,
know? You
and
know?
and this is the whole thing about Biden bringing up January 6th because we need that historical context. And I saw some historians on, or I've been reading what they're saying about January 6th. And, we haven't had an insurrection like this since 1851, since like, the Civil War times.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just have
Um,
never had, and this is like so unique, so historical. That's why January 6th is not something that you can gaslight and say, oh, it didn't really
yeah.
happen. Oh, it happened.
Actually, the only time that the Capitol was threatened in with real armament and all the rest of it was by the Brits.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a little thing called the War of 1812.
Oh, the 1812. Yeah. All right. So,
Oh,
Dan, let's transition to another bit of, if Haley can't answer questions on the Civil War, we have this problem about,
I'm sorry, man. I keep laughing because it to me it was so freaking comical.
yeah.
She ends at the end of the quote usually is, "What do you want me to say about slavery?"
Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
Oh
she
God.
just wants to will it away. She can't
Yeah,
will it away. But
why do you think this is important at all? I
yeah.
mean, just cut it out, man. What do you want me
Yeah.
to say?
Hey, slavery. Hey, but you
Hey,
know what? That communicates with a lot of people who are on that. Hey, what's history? Hey,
hey,
they all
yeah.
love Donald Trump, right? All right. So now let the Haley wasn't the only one who couldn't answer a straight question on something. The whole thing with Claudine Gay, professor
Oh boy,
of Harvard, was
we got a
uh,
problem.
the the issue of her answer to the congressional hearing. I thought before this week that she would last a week, maybe 2 weeks, that it would maybe die down. It did not die down. And
Because they found some stuff.
yeah, well, on Monday, the people who have and you're a professor, right? And you know the software. You put the stuff in to find citation lapses or where things are. People who teach, they know how to find things that are plagiarized. They put it through. They find out, and there were like a total of 50 allegations that came up on Monday, and then on Tuesday she in her letter she says she consults with the corporation, and then she resigned. So my question, I've been talking about it all week. um
Yeah, I was
yeah,
looking at your
and I,
blog, and
and I
it's
wrote
really
on the
quite good.
well, thank you. I wrote on the Aldef blog about what it's really about, but I wanted to get your
Yeah,
take
and I
about
think we should talk about it.
yeah. So Claudine Gay, well, it's worth talking about still because it's not going to go away. She has resigned, but the issue of
But they're going to
attacking,
go hunting. They're going to go hunting for others.
yeah. And in fact, one reporter went after Bill Ackman, the hedge fund runner, who is leading the charge against you know woke type
Yeah,
presidents.
yeah.
And they her his wife is a scholar, and they did some uh, checking on her work, and her work was highly plagiarized according to the software. So it's
Yoo-hoo!
going to go back and forth.
And
So my
there's the question of intent,
mm,
right? And then just mere negligence.
yeah,
Okay, and
yeah,
so many of the things that you might accuse Professor Gay of were rather negligence rather than either gross negligence or intent.
right. It wasn't, and it didn't compromise the research necessarily. She could add a citation. It wasn't like germane to the research that she was doing. That her work apparently is still considered.
Yeah, by germane you mean intellectually, right?
Yeah,
And
or
and and
yeah,
and
it
in
was
terms of applicability, it's still valuable.
right. I mean, it didn't refute any of the research she did, but it was like a phrase of something like a that she used that might have been included somewhere, and so
It's going to get really tough. It's going to get they're going to follow this plagiarism thing through, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to be able to find it on all sides.
yeah, yeah,
So basically, what this will end up doing is saying the big research institutions, at least, and most universities, are misleading our kids.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we gotta get people on their boards, on their trustees, on their regents, and we gotta make sure that we put a stop to this kind of stuff. So it's
so
going to be the anti-woke, anti-CRT argument lifted to the university level.
right,
That's what I
because
see coming.
we've seen it at the local level, at the public school level, K
That's
through
right.
12. Now it's going to go up, and
That's right.
it's going to be the activism of MAGA Republican conservatives to go
Right.
after higher ed, and they are going to eradicate or make everything that was easy, that you thought, oh, we have a collegial attitude here in our university. Forget that. There's nothing collegial
And
anymore.
it's going to be war.
And
It's
that's
going to be war. It's
exactly
going to be
what.
nasty. It's, some people are going to, don't go to meetings where there's people with canes.
Well, the thing is, this is what Biden was saying, that Trump wants war. Well, we can't have a civil argument.
Yeah,
We we
that's right.
we we end up, everything has to be war. Everything. It's sort of like me playing Scrabble or
Oh,
categories.
man.
I insist that rezap is a word. I insist.
Yeah, but do you get physical, man? Do you start?
Ah,
Do you
I,
start
I start
threatening
yelling and
people?
screaming. On,
Yeah.
on Scrabble, yes. On categories, not quite so much. But look, I draw the line at democracy and at higher ed and school boards. I don't I
Oh
don't
my
go
gosh.
crazy about that. But I'm telling you, this is the new direction, because when
Yeah, it is. It
I
is.
saw Gay go down, will the people at San Francisco State, your employer, your emeritus there, do state schools, public,
Yeah.
private schools, they all have to worry about that.
Yes. Yes. Everybody's going to have to worry about it because on all campuses there are right wing elements.
Yeah,
Okay, and even without any regard to the specific faculties, right? You have campuses that are located in areas, like the burbs,
mhm,
and even in some conservative states, right? Even in the urban areas, where there are people who are loaded for bear and they're going to come in and do that. They've
yeah.
already proven they can do that successfully, right?
And
At the school board level.
and the fact that they went after Harvard, very symbolic,
Right.
right? You got
That's
a
right. Yep.
African American first African
Big
American
one.
president, second female. You topple
Yep.
her at the most symbolic, institution
And
of
gay.
higher ed. And I'm just
And,
saying
and,
that
and
that's got to embolden a lot of people to say, well, God, if we can get Harvard, we can get Abilene State. If we get Harvard, well,
she was a
we
triple target, is what you're
yeah,
saying. She was a triple target all the way down the line. And so I think one of the articles that I read said that she was easy prey,
yeah.
and because she was a triple target, and
Triple.
I agree with that.
I think that, and this goes to the Nikki Haley comment, on slavery, when she was asked about, the situation at Harvard. She says it depends on the context. That was her namby-pamby answer. It was just she wanted to prevent uh, any kind of. She didn't want to give a real nuanced answer, because that's not what they understand at this
No, then
congressional.
no. Well, see, all of it is she was in trouble right from the get.
Yeah,
Okay, and she made it worse by giving that kind of milquetoast response.
yeah,
What she was doing was actually academically and philosophically correct.
right,
Okay, because the reality is, Stefanik was not citing an actual occurrence.
right. It
She
was just
made
very
up
general,
she
very
made up
general.
a hypothesis.
Right.
She made up a hypothesis and she confronted them with a hypothesis as though it was real, as though it was happening. Okay?
She
And they
stepped.
responded to the hypothesis. That already is an academic thing over the heads of most people in American
But
society, including college educated people.
yeah, but it could be twisted, and it was. It was
Yes,
twisted by Stefanik. It was twisted by
yes.
everyone. And so as I said on this program on Tuesday, I went on a hike, and I went on a hike, and I was out of reach for cell phone, and before the hike, I saw the thing saying Claudine Gay has resigned. And I saw her letter first came to members of the Harvard community, and then the corporation put
Yeah.
out its letter, and then
Yeah.
but before both, the New York Times had the story first, and they put out a bulletin. And so I had to make a choice. Do I go hiking? If Claudine Gay is going to take a hike, I think I'll take a hike. So I took a hike, and when I came back down, I said, "Oh my God, this is big." Then I wrote my piece, which you know it combined with the piece I wrote December 15th on the ALDEF blog, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I mean, I said this is really not about fighting anti-Semitism, keeping students safe. That's sort of the pretext, but we're really all about trying to root out wokeism from college
Yeah.
campuses.
100%.
And it's all
100%.
and it's also the second coming of the affirmative action debate, which is why
Whoa.
well,
Whoa.
Harvard
That's what I
already
really liked about your column, by the way.
well, thank you. Well, Harvard already took it on the chin about affirmative action, and now they do not have any data, or they don't release any data on the early admissions folks because they don't want to
Yeah.
upset Supreme Court. So so we are totally in the dark about what
Well,
their
okay.
process.
Let's
What,
get
what
to it. Let's get to
yeah
it. Why do you think there are practical reasons, right,
yeah
in terms of public reaction
yeah
that they might not want to publish the
oh
actual racial and ethnic backgrounds of the people that they have admitted?
yeah
And what
because
do you think they are?
if Asians go down, that's bad news.
Well, that's bad news for us. But
Yeah.
what about the rest of society? What do they think?
Well, if whites go up, then everyone applauds, right?
Well, maybe
Yeah.
because they're anti DEI, right?
Yeah.
But it's that simple now. So they're anti CRT. Now they're anti DEI, right? Which means that they're going to aim at affirmative action. The Harvard case, though, is an academic, not an academic in the sense that it's only about gymnastics, intellectual gymnastics. It's an academic case, literally, because it involves education. Okay, as an institution. Okay, the next step is employment.
Mm.
And this has already been done. It's been done in the state of California in the 1980s. Remember, oh, no, 1990s. Remember that?
Prop 209. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And yeah.
CCRI. And how did they couch that? It was the California Civil Rights Initiative. We
Right.
want to make good. And what did they do? They quoted Martin Luther King.
Right.
Judge us by the content of our character. Remember that?
Yep. Yep. I do. I fought that on talk radio back then. Look how successful I was.
Yeah,
And
me too.
now it's come back, and yeah, the next step is not just public and private universities. It's going to be public and private workplaces.
That's right.
And already there are universities, colleges dumping DEI, and with that, there's gonna be workplaces dumping DEI in their HR departments. And if you thought that, hey, there's racism in the workplace, well, prepare, prepare
Get
for
ready because it's going to get harder to sue on that basis,
yeah,
and that's where we're going to go. Inevitably, there's going to be a big reaction, and people of color are going to have to unite um, across ethnic lines
yeah,
and go after unfairness. The CCRI, most of it got struck down as unconstitutional because there were many lawsuits, right, that went against it.
right,
But in California, Dan Lundgren tried to enforce all of that stuff. I mean, I remember when he went against Santa Clara County, and he
yeah,
said Santa Clara County had put up information, data on what the ethnicities and racial background was of their employees, and all they did was publish a generalized count, right? Nothing specific, but a generalized count of specific ethnicities, and he said that's illegal, and I
right,
said in class, I said, I'm glad he did that, and everybody said, why? He's challenging it, and I said, because he's gonna fail. If he challenges it, it's got to be heard by the state Supreme Court and potentially on appeal all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it will lose in at least 2 out of 3 of those places, and even at the U.S. Supreme Court level at that time.
But
But
not
that
now. Not now.
no, not now. Now they're going to do it, and they could be successful. I just had this conversation with one of my other former students, who is also a professor and has get higher degrees than I do in law.
Yeah.
Oh, and from Harvard, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think that Harvard's very cautious to put out any information about the early decision, the racial components there. But you can bet that when the final admits come out, I guess it comes out in like February or March. Um, we'll find out. We'll find out nothing. They'll say nothing about race and ethnicity
That
because they'll
I
say that
suspect that, yes, I agree with you.
when
Here's
they don't know.
here's my other scenario, though. My other scenario is they don't want to disclose it because if they go merit and strong on merit, there's going to be a lot of Asian Americans who get admitted.
Yeah.
And the argument in the '80s, all right, nationally, and it made the front cover of Newsweek. In fact, Newsweek came out with a specific special publication.
Mm,
They came out with a short version of the magazine, and it was all about nature or nurture, and it was there's so many Asians getting into the best universities and colleges, and they constitute 20 and 30% of the admissions to, for example, the University of California, and they only constitute less than 6% of the total population in American society.
yeah.
So they came up with the nature versus nurture. And, that's really dangerous stuff, because when you say nature versus nurture, people think genetics. And when was the last time we got people persecuting folks for their genetics? You
Yeah.
know?
Most racist, Shockley, blacks, inferior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shockley and Jensen.
Yeah.
You
So,
know?
but so we can expect more attacks on people like Claudine Gay and other administrators and at the higher ed level. But one of the things about my piece is that I said Harvard should have fought back.
Oh
Harvard,
yeah, absolutely.
Harvard should have, as I put it in my column, Claudine Gay was not the hill to die on for
Yeah.
DEI to die on for Harvard, but it should have been. They should have made her. And I mean, this goes to the idea that look in the first part of her letter to the alums. It said, "Look, I met with the institution. This is what they said. I'm resigning." And the corporate board let her kind of know. It kind of led the way, and I that really rubbed me wrong because I thought the corporate board should have stood up for her. The corporate board, which is far more diverse than people think, but there's
Yeah,
also
that's right.
it's filled with a lot of you know hedge fund guys, former hedge fund guys, a lot of rich guys who don't. I mean, it would it
Well,
to
do you
me.
think that might have something to do with their donor base? I
Yeah,
mean, maybe,
well,
maybe.
that's why I think that it was the donors who were leading the rebellion.
Yeah, yeah,
Bill Ackman,
yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah,
another hedge fund guy, and
yeah, yeah.
so to me, it just seemed. Here's the irony. Also, Claudine Gay does not just go away. She might just have a space in the corner, and she,
No, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, what people don't understand is she's going to retire back to a professorial position.
but as a former professor, she holds a seat at the corporate board. So I gather she would get a vote. I gather she would still have a say. And I gather she will retain most of her 870,000 plus salary a year, which is a
Yeah, it
lot.
depends on the contract, but yes, usually when an administrator retreats back to a professorial position, they're paid their highest level of pay in whatever position they previously held.
Yeah. So I I'm curious to see what kind of power she'll have. That's another thing to look at. Subsequent to this, she still will be on the board, and then the interim, youngish guy, 68, in my class, I actually met him. He might hang on. He might say, "Hey, he was considered a front runner when Neil Rudenstein was selected, and now maybe he gets his chance." I don't know. I mean, this is higher ed office politics, which, as higher ed office politics is sometimes it's worse
I've
than
had so many people. I've had so many of my former students who are now, in the ranks of the professoriate, have to face these issues.
yeah. I
And
mean,
and I confess to them that it was a struggle for all of us, but it wasn't as hard then as it is now. People think it was harder back then because the society was more openly racist and all that, which is true. But because the society was so openly racist, it was easy to point at it and say, "Look, I dare you to tell me that doesn't exist."
yeah.
Okay,
Well,
now,
now,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Well,
much more subtle. It's confused with all of these allegations against wokeness and CRT and all that stuff, and it's all coded, right?
yeah.
And it's got a lot of people who feel good about being able to come out and talk about reverse discrimination. I mean, that was, the Baki case was the first case, and it was only, oh, what, 4 or 5 years after affirmative action was even started as a project,
Right,
a federal project.
right. And it was in the '60s. UC
Yeah.
Davis, the Baki case.
Well,
Maybe
no, the Baki case was 75 as a
it's in,
California case, and it's 78 as a Supreme Court case,
and
U.S.
that,
Supreme Court.
yeah, UC Davis Med School, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what made me think about
Dufunis was 70-71 in
yeah,
Seattle,
yeah,
and that was a law school case.
yeah. It made me think of going back to what we were saying about Nikki Haley and slavery. It's like
Don't get me laughing again.
she couldn't condemn slavery, but we have other things instead of slavery now. We have
Yeah,
when you underpay people so much, is that slavery? I mean, you can make the case that that's a kind of slavery.
and the interesting thing was that argument was being made pre-Trump,
Yeah,
right? So people were saying, look, underpaying people, and then that was a major argument for raising, the national,
minimum wage.
yeah, minimum wage, and it went down like a lead balloon, as it
Yeah,
just.
I mean, this is why. I mean, I only bring it up because we mentioned racism, affirmative action, and Claudine Gay, but with the Nikki Haley case, you know, when the questions about slavery are important because you got to see how people articulate labor and race,
Yep.
and because we don't call it slavery now, but we call it underpaying people so much that they can't live a decent life. We call it not having people of a certain
That's
class
right.
afford
That's
decent
right.
housing. We don't call it slavery. We call it something else. But
Underemployment. There,
yeah,
there, there were two kinds of underemployment. One is when people don't get paid enough to live a decent security of food and housing,
yeah,
right? Um, and then the underemployment in terms of people being overqualified for the kind of job that they hold,
yeah.
and that was applied a lot to the instance of immigrants arriving to American society with advanced
Oh, yeah.
degrees, sometimes
They're doctors,
master's degrees.
lawyers.
Yes, yes, and professional degrees, and then being not unqualified, not disqualified, but unqualified by U.S. and state standards because the same subject matter wasn't covered where they got their professional
Yeah,
degree standing, even
I
though
know people.
at the doctorate
I
level,
know people got screwed by that.
a
A
lot.
lot, not in Filipinos, and also I know some Latinos. They
I know a lot of Chinese and
yeah,
Filipinos, and I know a few Latinos. It started to change in the '80s and the '90s, but look how late that
right.
is. That it took that
See,
long.
I mean, this is the thing. You need Congress there to fight for you, and it's all kind of hollow when you don't have the majority. when
That's
you
right.
don't have a majority fighting for you. I mean, there's some good books on out right now on democracy, talking about the tyranny of the minority, talking about
Right.
the failure of democracy, that we don't, that the minority has too much power over.
I have about at least 15 books as you exactly as you
Yeah,
described.
I mean, it's
And
true. I mean, we need to somehow change that. I mean, if the minority through, say, filibuster, or through uh, electoral college, or through whatever ways that the minority has
voter suppression.
voter suppression. I mean,
And there's three different kinds, right? And they use them all.
and the problem with this is that if you can get away with being an obstructive minority, and it seems that white people have taken this up as they get outnumbered, in society, they become the obstructive minority and they hold up progress. And
Which is really an interesting situation, right?
yeah,
Because when people of color, and particularly African Americans, Native Americans, and as we call them now, Latinos, but back in the day, it was mostly people of Mexican descent, right?
right.
Um, that we were pushing to expand the envelope, right, of rights, and who had the rights, and how much access you had to that. And we were trying to expand the envelope in terms of access to economic privileges, if you want to call them that. At least access to people don't remember, it's banks. They didn't, not only did they redline neighborhoods, they redlined people,
Yeah.
right? Here in San Francisco, remember the Auto Row? Oh no, you were just a
Yeah.
real young
Van
fellow.
Ness, I remember Auto.
Yeah, yeah, and it was all about not giving black people access to credit loans so they could buy
Oh yeah.
cars. All kind of racist jokes came out about black people wanting Cadillacs,
Yeah.
because the image was about black people not being able to afford Cadillacs even though they wanted them. The reality was they could afford
They
Cadillacs
couldn't,
and
they couldn't get
Buicks.
the loan.
They couldn't get the financing.
See, you talk about one racist instance, and it leads into this, we Pandora's box of other racist.
Well, because we know the
Yeah.
history, and unfortunately, that's not what's being taught. And so now they want to prevent that from being taught. Okay. So they're going to come after ethnic studies. They're going to come after ethnic studies
Oh
hard.
yeah, and when Claudine Gay goes down, it's going to come. It's going to be the example set with Harvard. It'll happen at every place: San Francisco State, UC's, everywhere.
Yeah, the challenge will come. I think depending on how people look at state, it might the attack might occur at UC first.
Yeah.
Because UC's got a big name. It's like Harvard being the big
Yeah.
name, right? So they're going to go after the other Ivy League schools, right? One of the If they were really strategic about it, they would go after Cornell, and they will go after Cornell and Columbia, because from an academic point of view, those schools were far more progressive
Yeah.
than Harvard.
Yeah.
It's just Harvard's got the big name. It's got the greatest amount of prestige. But in terms of actual academic and social
Yeah.
activism, and having a faculty that reflects that, Cornell and Columbia, far more than Harvard.
Well, so we'll see. We'll still be able to follow this story because it's not going to go away. I
No,
just,
this is a beginning. This is actually a beginning of a new
but
phase.
tell me, Dan, if Harvard had stood up, they because it's a private school, they could have said, "You
Yeah,
can't tell us what to do."
absolutely.
I mean, the 14th Amendment, or whatever amendment they want to throw out there, I mean, it doesn't really apply. They could have stood up and said, "We got a $60 billion endowment. We don't need your public money," right?
Yep,
But they didn't.
absolutely, absolutely. But it's connected with prestige too. They don't want to see themselves as being in a position where they're going to be allied by the general public, right, with DEI. That they're too committed to these very soft woke value scales, and
Dan.
much in Harvard, and so um,
Yeah.
yeah, Stanford. They never acknowledged that that any Asian American ethnic group might benefit from affirmative action. They never
Yeah.
did.
But Stanford also had the issue of their president going through he didn't plagiarize. He just outright lied about data.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And, and they, and all the anti woke people just gave him a lot of latitude because he wasn't an easy case. He wasn't the right case. But
Right.
Claudine Gay was the right case. I feel sad for her. And I got to tell you, I think every Asian American or any person of color who's an alum, felt the sting of her going down.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I did. So, all right.
Uh,
So we'll continue to watch Claudine Gay. Before I let you go, I had to bring this up. I had to talk about Stephen Curry's errant pass that was stolen
oh,
that then ends up in the hands of Nikola Jokovic, who puts up a
he
40.
did a 40-footer.
Yeah, and then beats the Golden State Warriors. This is one of those games that you got to say this is a landmark milestone game.
Yeah, that's right.
If the Warriors do not recover from this, they're done. They're.
For this season, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make logical sense that they're done. It's one game.
Right.
They can turn it around, but this is a significant moment for them. And if they don't, I don't know what's wrong with them. They're number one.
They got 4 more games right in this homestand.
Yeah, they're playing tonight. I think they're old, number one, and I think Steve Kerr is.
Yeah, he might be. Outliving his tenure.
Well, I think he's just got to change his approach. He's got some young guys that if he played, I mean, I see Moses Moody. I like Moses Moody more than Jonathan Kuminga.
You're kidding? Really?
I do. Because Kuminga's developing his outside shot, but Moses Moody had his outside shot.
Yeah, he does have a 3.
Yeah, and I like Moody. They're only 21, right? They were young, right out of high school.
Yeah,
and so they're still young, but they need the reps, and they're not getting the reps. And
yep.
And it just bothers me that Golden State's oldsters.
Well, see, I think Kerr he's as much an understanding. He understands showmanship as much as the value of bringing in the crowd, to pay the money. And the crowd loves to see the Splash Brothers when they're working right.
Yeah.
And my wife and I are screaming at the screen whenever Curry does that stuff. He's got to take that out of his bag of tricks. His look away pass, his no look pass, has gone errant too many times, and
at key moments,
it's cost us whole games, more than once. Even this season.
They've had these huge leads. I thought, 18-point lead, 6 minutes left. Oh, no leads, big enough in the NBA. And sure enough, oh my God,
give it up. They turnovers, and man, it was really bad. He's got to eat a little humble pie.
Yeah,
and cut that stuff out, right? Yeah. I mean, they're so good. The opposition is so good that they know they can pick off passes now. Okay,
yeah.
So it was like what we saw with the Niners facing the Ravens. That was a good wake up call, man. And I think it may as well have been a preview. Of the
Super Bowl.
Game. Yeah,
could be. I mean, they're. Let's see. I mean, they're resting. The 49ers are resting their players. Everyone is resting their players, which means why do we have this extra game except to placate owners who want an extra game?
They want money. That's it.
More money. Yeah,
that's it.
but it's like one game too many, and then that would be ideal, right? If we get a break and just give more money at the big
Well,
games.
well, they shortened the preseason, so there's that.
Yeah. Well, they don't ask me how to run things. All
Yeah.
right, look. So Dan,
It's the
happy.
money. It's the money,
Yeah,
please.
of
It's
course. Well,
capitalism.
so Dan, happy January 6th.
Oh
Uh,
my God! How could you say that?
and well, I mean, it's a time. It's a somber time, but it's a time to remember that. I think because everyone's getting gaslit on January 6th, you just have to say, "Oh, it happened. It really happened."
It
That's the
was a real threat. It was a real threat. The only thing that could have been better in terms of January 6th being a true lesson,
yeah.
okay, for America is if a congressperson got severely injured or killed. If
Uh,
somebody, especially if a Republican got severely injured or killed,
yeah,
right?
there was well, there were deaths. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
you know,
but but they were the cops and stuff,
and the
But
one protester,
yeah,
but
that's right,
yeah, but
right.
you're right. If there was a death of a congressman, a public person, then
They wouldn't be able to get away with the crap that they're saying now.
yeah.
I mean, it's really ridiculous what they're saying now.
Well, that's why if people hear someone saying, "Oh, January 6th didn't happen," you got to stand up and say, "Look, it's history. It's real. It's the truth. Don't gaslight America. It happened. January 6th was happened, and it was evil, and our democracy is under threat."
And people who say that it didn't happen are still going to be there. They're still going to be there. They're still going to act on it. There's nothing that you can do to change their minds, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's two things you got to worry about. They have hyper aggressive personalities, and they got guns.
All right, so you have to keep your cool and
Isn't that happy? That's a happy time,
yeah,
man.
make your point, and
Yeah, you hear people trying to be confrontational. I had one woman in front of me at the grocery store saying, no, I don't want to register to vote, and I don't care, right? And in a very aggressive way. And you could see everybody kind of look down and say, okay, we're going to let that go because this person may be armed.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that is the thing. But she's responding in a way that is learned. She sees how Trump acts and how the MAGA folks act, how the insurrectionists act, and she's just acting out in the way that has now become normal for our political discourse, unfortunately.
Yep.
Right, and it is sad. I mean, because you should be able to, you know, be able to disagree and say, "Oh, but we're on the same team." Democracy, yay! Is
That that the hardcore Trump voter, they don't want democracy. They actually want authoritarianism, and but as long as it favors their position and their quality of life,
yeah,
they actually want that. And I wish that the liberals and progressives, the really nice people who think all you got to do is tell the truth and base your positions on fact, and people will come around. You got to get off of that. They
yeah,
will not come around, and you better wise up because you're putting yourself in danger if you don't understand that. You may not face as much danger in San Francisco, but don't go to any further east than Livermore,
hey,
and
wait a
don't
minute.
go any
I'm east
further.
of Livermore. Hey,
Yeah, you are,
but
and you're not in a.
but it's
Yeah.
true. It's true though. I mean, I don't know. This is the sad thing about where we are as a democracy. That
Yep,
so
it is. It is. That's why I use it as a joke in my classes. I said, how you can tell who do you want to stay away from when you're on the freeway is how many American flags they have decorating their car. Right. The more American flags they have, the greater likelihood is that they're going to drive aggressively. So you gotta stay away from that.
yeah,
It used to be gun racks.
yeah,
Pickup trucks with gun racks in the back. I said, you don't want to stay away from that. He said, well, but they're not showing any rifle. And I said, what if they got a handgun in their lap?
yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. On that note, Dan, thank you very much for setting the tone for
Sure,
January
sure.
6th.
Well, I have a semi bulletproof Audi, so I drive that one instead of the Toyota whenever I fear that I'm going to be amongst the people who have a myriad of American flags in different versions decorating
Yeah.
their pickup truck.
Well, that's sad. That's sad about America. But look, we're gonna, I guess,
January 6th, let's memorialize it, understand it for what it was and the reality that it represents, and then move on. Because we're going to have to make a dire choice in just a few months. And I am not confident in the probable outcomes. I think it's going to be close. I think it could come down to the Electoral College again.
yeah.
You
Well, we'll leave it there, Dan. You have a way of putting things so that we just feel totally depressed going into the weekend. Thank you very much, Dan.
Well, you were the guy who brought up Curry's errant pass, man.
Well,
I
all
mean,
right.
that's what put me on a downer. I mean, and then we got
Curry's errant pass.
he's got to cut that stuff out. It's got to come out of his bag of tricks, man. No look passes and all that stuff, man.
Right.
The bounce pass, the low bounce pass. No.
That's the thing about Biden. He doesn't do no look passes anymore.
That's right. That's right. It's good.
Just pass.
Straight in the face. Okay, that's cool.
All right. All right.
We just got to make sure it's our guy.
That's true. All right.
All right.
There you go.
Thanks for having me. Have a great weekend, and hugs to Kath.
Yeah. Hey, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks. There he goes, Daniel Phil Gonzalez, my friend. College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American Studies, Asian American political analyst. We talk about things, including the Golden State Warriors. Man, that's pathetic. There's still it's still a long season. But we talked earlier. If you missed any or all or part of this, go use your finger. Go to the beginning. We talk about Biden's speech. We play bits of Biden's speech. I wanted it to be more raucous. It wasn't very raucous, but it was the kind of speech you'd expect from an 80-year-old guy, who just really, it was somber. It was real. It was personal. And I mean, you need someone who's going to tell you that.
We live in an era where a determined minority is doing everything in its power to try to destroy our democracy for their own agenda.
See, I mean, you just need some straight talk. And that's what Joe Biden did today. He gave us straight talk. If you missed his speech, go pick it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. Because it's important.
Today, I make this sacred pledge to you. The defense, protection, and preservation of American democracy will remain, as it has been, the central cause of my presidency.
Hey, you got that big applause. That energized him.
America, as we begin this election year, we must be clear. Democracy is on the ballot.
Don't mistake that. Democracy is on the ballot. Yeah, he says.
Your freedom is on the ballot.
Your freedom is on the ballot. But as Dan says, even if Biden wins, it's not over. We got to continue. And that's why it's important to see who's on the bench. Kamala Harris? It's Kamala Harris. Who else? Who else are our leaders? Both sides of the aisle. Think about that on January 6th. All right, we're here Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. We come on. We talk about the news. We talk about what people are talking about. Talk about what people are saying on the news. You can catch us on YouTube at Emil Amok 1. That's youtube.com/ at Emil Amok 1, EMIL AMOK 1. On Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, at Emil Amok, EMIL AMOK. Also on Facebook, fb.com/emilguillermo.media. Also under my name, Emil Guillermo. As we're here, we're talking about this. This is probably a repeat throughout the weekend. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. We do this meditation. We close with a little meditation, a little loving kindness. Because, all this stuff is external. We got to, everything's an inside job. We got to feel good about the inside. Democracy's inside because we make our choices. And if we feel good on the inside, we'll make the right choice. It begins with a little loving kindness meditation. Metta, M-E-T-T-A. You love others, but you start off loving yourself. It goes out to others. Twofold comes back. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal Gita.